Chapter 2540. It was precisely because the Yu clan had recruited a lot more people than usual that a few doctors who usually had no hope had come to try their luck. This might be the best opportunity in their lives. Once they missed it, they would not have another chance in the future. After all, no matter what kind of criteria the Yu clan used to recruit them, as long as they could pass the recruitment ceremony, their reputation would be different from before. I never thought that the Yu clan's influence would be so big. The heavens really don't have eyes. Xiao Hei's face was full of resentment. This Yu clan did not have the slightest bit of morality to help the world. On the contrary, they were an extremely powerful clan. However, it was this kind of clan that was the holy land in the hearts of the Xingxian continent's doctors and poison masters. Speaking of which, it was really a pity. Yu Xiqing herself is so vicious, yet she is a doctor. Isn't this a very ironic thing? Xiao Bai shook its head. From its point of view, Yu Xiqing did not learn medicine to save people but to harm people. Bailey Hongzhuang sighed faintly. It's not a pity to destroy such a cold-blooded and heartless clan like the Yu clan. However, to destroy the holy land in the hearts of the Xingxian continent's doctors and poison masters, I don't know if it will hurt the hearts of many people. She had never considered this problem before. If the Yu clan was a clan with a conscience that helped the world, then even if she had a deep hatred with Yu Xiqing, she would not destroy the entire Yu clan. Unfortunately, the reality was not so. The entire Yu clan was in cahoots with evil, cold-blooded and heartless to the bone. Just from the fact that Yu Xiqing needed to collect such a large amount of remuneration to treat Lan Qingyan, it could be seen that for a moment, Bailey Hongzhuang sympathized with Lan Qingyan. This was because Lan Qingyan's family members were all so cold and heartless. In comparison, although Bailey Hongzhuang had suffered many years of humiliation in the general's residence, at least the people by her side now treated her with sincerity and had never asked for anything in return. Seeing Bailey Hongzhuang's worry, Di Beichen reached out and held Bailey Hongzhuang's soft hand. His voice was magnetic and full of persuasion. Wife, every world has a certain order. When a power disappears, there will always be a new power rising. This is just like the fall and rise of a dynasty. Just like how we have destroyed the Yu clan now, it might be a great loss to the doctors and poison masters, but in the future, a medical aristocratic family with medical ethics might appear. At that time, who can say that everything is wrong now? The gentle and elegant smile on his extraordinarily handsome face swept across Bailey Hongzhuang's heart like a spring breeze, brushing away all her original worries. What's more, the Yu clan's own power, their goal has always been to seek benefits. Hearing this, Bailey Hongzhuang nodded slightly. That's right. I was thinking too much. Just now, when she was eating in the restaurant's lobby, she saw the excited eyes of all the doctors and poison masters when they talked about the recruitment conference. She could feel that it was a kind of worship that came from the bottom of their hearts. Therefore, she felt that she shouldn't have destroyed everyone's hopes. However, after thinking about it carefully, things were just as Di Beichen had said. Everything was related to karma. It was impossible for her to not take revenge for the Yu clan. Chapter 2541. All this while, the Yu clan has always prioritized benefits. Over the years, many sick people have come to the Yu clan to seek medical treatment, but as long as they don't pay enough, the Yu clan wouldn't care at all. Who knows how many bones and tears have been buried in Yutian City. Under the Yu clan's influence, the doctors they nurtured were also affected by this kind of atmosphere. In comparison, the destruction of this kind of power would only cause a certain amount of damage in a short period of time. They might develop better in the future. Actually, there are also many medical families that have been developing these years. It's just that they have always been suppressed by the Yu clan to strengthen the Yu clan's position. Di Beichen's gaze was gentle and doting. Actually, he always knew that his wife was kind. If others didn't hurt her, she wouldn't take the initiative to hurt others. The reason why Bailey Hongzhuang felt this way was because she herself was a doctor, so she could empathize with the expectations of other doctors. Previously, when Bailey Hongzhuang was busy concocting the poison, he had already asked around about the recruitment event and the Yu clan's movements in recent years. This was also to let Bailey Hongzhuang not have any psychological burden. Bailey Hongzhuang could hear the deep sense of comfort in Di Beichen's words. The smile on her lips widened, her smile bright and beautiful. Beichen, thank you. Thank you for always staying by my side, supporting me no matter what happens. Di Beichen saw the seriousness and gratitude in Bailey Hongzhuang's eyes. He stretched out his right hand and lightly tapped the tip of Bailey Hongzhuang's nose. Little fool. In the next second, Bailey Hongzhuang had already fallen into Di Beichen's embrace. Di Beichen's right hand stroked Bailey Hongzhuang's silky hair, his lips curling into a happy smile. How could he not love this kind of woman? To him, even if he had to destroy everything in this world as long as his wife was happy, that was enough. He didn't care about what other people thought. Upon seeing this, the three beasts tacitly returned to the Chaos Ring. They were really looking forward to the marriage between their master and Di Baichen. In the blink of an eye, the day of the recruitment meeting arrived. Early in the morning, Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Baichen woke up early and headed towards the central plaza of Yutian City. They needed to get their tokens first. Di Baichen did not participate in the recruitment conference, so he only accompanied Bailey Hongzhuang. When the two of them arrived at the central square, they discovered that the central square was filled with a sea of people. The bustling scene was not the slightest bit worse than when the Battle of the Four Palaces was held. It was just that the flow of people was more complicated. Even though it was just the preliminary round, there were still many people paying attention to it. Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Baichen scanned the crowd and found the place to get their tokens. However, there was already a very long queue. As they knew that the number of people in the queue would be very shocking, Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Baichen had especially woken up early in the morning. They never thought that there would be so many people here. Looking at the long queue, Bailey Hongzhuang even suspected that this group of people had been queuing since last night. The number of people here is really terrifying. The sun will be high up in the sky in a while. I wonder how long we'll have to wait here. Baisher sighed. Judging from the number of people here, it would be impossible for them to wait for more than a few hours. Chapter 2542. Xiaobai will stay with me. When the queue is about to end, it will go to the restaurant to inform you to come. Di Baichen's face rippled with a gentle and refined smile. The weather had been hot recently. How could he bear to let his wife be exposed to the scorching sun for several hours? Hearing this, Bailey Hongzhuang was slightly startled, but after seeing Di Baichen's doting eyes, the corners of her lips blossomed into a bright smile. I'm fine. Over the years, she had experienced all kinds of difficult situations. Even if the scorching sun was in the sky, it did not matter. However, Di Baichen shook his head with a tough attitude. Go back and rest obediently. When you participated in the competition in the past, I was unable to be by your side. Now that I'm by your side, let me do it. All this time he did not have much time to spend with Hongzhuang and was unable to give her more love. Now he would do everything that he should do one by one. Bailey Hongzhuang's heart was filled with warmth. Apart from Di Baichen, no one else had given her such concern. Although it was a very simple matter, it was enough to warm her for a long time. Perhaps one day she would also not have to work hard. Relying on Di Baichen like this was also a kind of indescribable happiness. Go back quickly, I'll inform you when the time comes. Di Baichen's face was stern, as if he was going to use force if Bailey Hongzhuang did not go back. Bailey Hongzhuang smiled, then nodded helplessly. Then I'll go back first. Di Baichen nodded and watched Bailey Hongzhuang's back as she turned to leave. Only then did he walk into the long queue. After taking a few steps, Bailey Hongzhuang could not help but turn to look at the tall and imposing figure. The high and mighty young sect master of the Tiangang sect had now become an ordinary man. Xiao He and Baisher accompanied Bailey Hongzhuang by her side. Seeing the smile on Bailey Hongzhuang's face for a long time, Xiao He and Baisher were also full of smiles. Sure enough, Master was happiest when she was with Di Baichen. Bailey Hongzhuang returned to the restaurant. At this moment, the restaurant was undoubtedly much more deserted. Apart from the people in the restaurant, almost everyone else had gone to the central plaza. In the house, Bailey Hongzhuang could not help but look through the windowsill. Even though there was a sea of people, Bailey Hongzhuang could still see the unique figure at a glance. Di Baichen would always be different in her heart. Just as she was looking at Di Baichen's back, Di Baichen suddenly turned his head and smiled in the direction of the windowsill. Bailey Hongzhuang was slightly startled. The smile on her lips became even more brilliant. This feeling was really good. While waiting like this, Xiao Bai's figure also appeared in the house as the afternoon arrived. Master, the queue is almost there. Let's go. Xiao Bai's face was full of excitement. Her fluffy hair was a little wet at this moment. It was really hot under the scorching sun. Bailey Hongzhuang nodded and smiled faintly. Let's go quickly. When Bailey Hongzhuang arrived at the central plaza again, she realized that the number of people in the queue had not decreased at all compared to the morning. However, Di Baichen's figure had already appeared at the front of the line. It could be seen how great the influence of the recruitment convention was. It was really shocking that it took such a long time just to receive the number plate. Chapter 2543. Bailey Hongzhuang quickly passed through the crowd and came to Di Baichen's side. Di Beichen's forehead was also sweating because of the heat. She took out a handkerchief from her bosom and helped Di Beichen wipe his sweat. She smiled and said, "Are you tired?" Di Beichen chuckled, "How can I be tired when I line up for my wife?" After saying that, Di Beichen walked out and let Bailey Hongzhuang stand in his seat. When the surrounding people saw that Di Beichen was so considerate towards Bailey Hongzhuang, their eyes were filled with envy. "Look at him, how can the one in our family compare to him? Comparisons are odious." Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen didn't think that their actions would cause so many people to resent their lover. They couldn't help but stare blankly for a moment. However, the smile in their eyes didn't disappear. "Wife, in a while, when you receive your number plate, you still need to go through a few basic tests before you can receive your number plate. This is also to prevent cheating." It was precisely because there was such a process that it took so long to line up. Hearing Di Beichen's words, Bailey Hongzhuang understood. The Yu clan had held so many recruitment meetings and the process was very strict. There wasn't the slightest bit of mistake. "I understand. Then I'll go outside and wait for you." Di Beichen glanced at the surrounding situation. There were a total of 2 rows in the queue. Everyone was lining up by themselves. Him and Bailey Hongzhuang standing in the same row had undoubtedly aroused the suspicions and dissatisfaction of many people at the back. "Okay, I'll look for you when I'm done," Bailey Hongzhuang said with a smile. Di Beichen nodded and walked towards the back of the queue. With Bailey Hongzhuang's medical skills, passing this test was definitely not a problem. Not long after Di Beichen left, a disdainful voice suddenly sounded. "One look and I can tell that you're not the real deal. You're still showing off your love in a place like this. What a joke." Hearing this voice, Bailey Hongzhuang realized that it was a woman on the left who was looking at her with disdain. Seeing this, Bailey Hongzhuang couldn't help but frown. The others didn't have any objections, but she didn't expect such a fellow to appear. However, Bailey Hongzhuang did not care about her thoughts. After all, she didn't even know who the other party was and didn't intend to have too much interaction with these people. The woman saw that Bailey Hongzhuang only glanced at her indifferently and didn't say anything. She felt a little proud and immediately began to preach again. "In the future, don't do such things to please the crowd. When you fail, go and cry to your husband." The woman smiled proudly and looked at Bailey Hongzhuang as if she was looking at a failure. "Ji Lishue, there are a lot of people who came to participate in the recruitment this year. Many Tom, Dick and Harry came, thinking that they could pass the test with their mediocre medical skills. Why bother with these people?" At this moment, the other man behind the woman, Di Tiansong, also spoke slowly. Hearing this, Ji Lishue chuckled. "That's true. Even if there are more people in the recruitment this year, the competition is still not small. Many people thought that the Yu clan was a shelter, so they came to try. They didn't know that it was a complete joke." Chapter 2544. Bailey Hongzhuang, who had originally intended to ignore them, saw that the 2 people were getting more and more out of hand, and her expression changed a bit. "What does it have to do with you if I want to play to the gallery? Others don't talk as much as you." Bailey Hongzhuang opened her mouth and went straight to the other side. Since the other side liked to take the initiative to find trouble, she wasn't a person afraid of trouble. She was originally in a good mood today, but these 2 disgusting fellows just had to ruin her mood. It really made her unhappy. Ji Lishue and Di Tiansong's expressions changed when they heard that. They didn't expect this ordinary-looking girl to provoke them. The people around them who were unhappy with Ji Lishue and Di Tiansong's words felt a little better when they saw Bailey Hongzhuang stand up. If Bailey Hongzhuang hadn't stood up, they wouldn't have been able to resist standing up. "Woman, how dare you talk back to me?" Ji Lishue looked coldly at Bailey Hongzhuang. She could tell at a glance that this girl was from an ordinary family. How dare she talk back to her? Hearing this, Bailey Hongzhuang couldn't help but laugh. "I say, aren't you feeling too good about yourself? Who do you think you are? Talk back?" The other party wasn't her elder, so how could she talk back to her? "I am Ji Lishue." Ji Lishue emphasized. Ji Lishue looked at Bailey Hongzhuang proudly after she said that, as if Bailey Hongzhuang would be afraid when she heard her name. However, Bailey Hongzhuang shrugged nonchalantly and said, "Never heard of you." "Ji Lishue? Ji Lishue?" She had never heard of her name. The girl was waiting to see Bailey Hongzhuang's frightened expression, but she didn't expect Bailey Hongzhuang to suddenly say such a thing. She couldn't help but feel embarrassed. However, many people's expressions changed when they heard Ji Lishue's name. "Ji Lishue? That's the young miss of the Ji family, right? I heard that the young miss of the Ji family has always been interested in studying medicine. I didn't expect her to participate in this recruitment." I've also heard that the Ji clan isn't far from Yutian City. It's said that Ji Lishue received guidance from Grandmaster Yu Xiqing in the past. Lishue has always wanted to become Grandmaster Yu Xiqing's disciple. Ji Lishue's medical skills are very outstanding. Everyone said that she would definitely become Master Yu Xiqing's disciple this time. I didn't expect it to be her. Ji Lishue's expression only improved a little when the people around her knew who she was. Bailey Hongzhuang also understood. However, from the discussion of the surrounding people, this Ji family wasn't a real aristocratic family. It was just a small family. This kind of identity for Bailey Hongzhuang was simply nothing in her eyes. Who was she? The young palace master of Limitless Palace. Just this identity alone was enough to throw Ji Lishue far behind. You hurry up and apologize to me and I might consider letting you off. Ji Lishue put her hands on her hips and looked down at Bailey Hongzhuang, waiting for Bailey Hongzhuang to submit. Bailey Hongzhuang glanced coldly at Ji Lishue. She really didn't know how this girl developed the princess syndrome. If you shut your mouth now, I can still let you participate in this assessment. Otherwise I'll make you cry. Do you believe me? Chapter 2545. Almost everyone present thought that Bailey Hongzhuang would definitely apologize to Ji Lishue. After all, Ji Lishue's identity wasn't simple. If they offended Ji Lishue here, they definitely wouldn't have a good ending. However, Bailey Hongzhuang's answer stunned everyone present for a moment. She still dared to go against Ji Lishue at a time like this. Wasn't she just looking for trouble? This was too unwise. Moreover, judging from Bailey Hongzhuang's situation, she should be just an ordinary person. She didn't look like she had any background at all. Bailey Hongzhuang came here with a completely different image in front of others, so she bought the most ordinary clothes. In everyone's eyes, she was just an ordinary person. Hearing Bailey Hongzhuang's words, Ji Lishue was so angry that she laughed. Do I believe you? Of course I don't. One had to know that she, Ji Lishue, was a very famous person in this recruitment event. No matter who she said bad things about, they could only endure it. This guy who came out of nowhere dared to threaten her. He was simply courting death. Di Tiansong's eyes turned cold when he saw Bailey Hongzhuang being so stubborn. If you kneel down and apologize now, I can spare your life. Di Tiansong's voice was emotionless, as if it was a simple matter to take Bailey Hongzhuang's life. Everyone couldn't help but gasp when they heard Di Tiansong's words. They didn't expect Di Tiansong to be so ruthless. It was just a spat, but he wanted to take the other party's life. This was a little too cold-blooded. Master, it seems like we have to teach these two guys a lesson. Xiao Hei's eyes flashed with a cold and fierce light. Master had originally planned to participate in this recruitment convention in a low-key manner, but there were always people who didn't have the foresight to ruin everything. Then I'll just take care of them. Bailey Hongzhuang's expression turned even colder. She hadn't seen such a blind person in a long time. In the distance, Di Beichen was waiting for Bailey Hongzhuang to receive her number plate. However, when he saw that the situation in front of him was not right, his deep eyes could not help but be filled with a complicated light. Bang! The sound of a heavy object falling to the ground shocked everyone present. When everyone saw the scene in front of them clearly, the entire scene seemed to have frozen. Everyone stood there in a daze, wondering if they had seen wrongly. She saw that Di Beichen, who had left before, had appeared in front of Bailey Hongzhuang and was stepping on Di Tiansong's chest. What did you just say? Di Beichen opened his mouth slowly. His light tone was filled with coldness and coldness. He was very angry. He had only been away from Hongzhuang for a short while, and someone actually dared to cause trouble for Hongzhuang. Moreover, it seemed that the cause of this matter was still him. Di Tiansong was completely unprepared. When he reacted, he felt as if he had been attacked by a flood or a ferocious beast and fell to the ground. The other party's foot was on his chest, making it impossible for him to breathe. However, that wasn't the only thing that shocked everyone. When Di Beichen stepped on Di Tiansong's chest, Bailey Hongzhuang's hand had already grabbed Ji Lishue's neck and faintly lifted her body off the ground. Chapter 2546. Ji Lishue stared at Bailey Hongzhuang with her eyes wide open. This scene was beyond her imagination. She didn't expect Bailey Hongzhuang to treat her like this after knowing her identity. Did Bailey Hongzhuang have a death wish? Everyone's eyes fell on Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen. Their actions were really shocking. Where the hell did these two people come from? How dare they attack Miss Ji? Aren't they digging their own graves? I don't think so. These two are so powerful right from the start. I don't think they are ordinary people. We don't know who will win in the end. These two are so powerful. They must be cultivators. Everyone kept thinking. Generally speaking, doctors and alchemists were the same. They put all their energy into studying medical skills and were not interested in cultivation. However, it was obvious that Bailey Hongzhuang was not only a doctor but also a cultivator. Otherwise, how could her strength be so amazing? Just as Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen restrained Di Tiansong and Di Beichen, their subordinates rushed up. Ji Lishua saw her subordinates rushing over and quickly said, "Kill them." As soon as she said that, the thugs quickly rushed toward Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen, and the doctors in the line around them also retreated. If they were implicated at this time, they would really want to cry but have no tears. Bailey Hongzhuang loosened her right hand and threw Ji Lishua to the ground. Di Beichen also released his foot from Di Tiansong's chest. Bang, bang, bang. The sound of fists and feet colliding rang out, followed by the sound of heavy objects falling to the ground. This development was completely beyond everyone's expectations. Ji Lishua and Di Tiansong were completely dumbfounded. In the blink of an eye, all the thugs had been dealt with by Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen. At this moment they were piled up like a human pyramid, like a pile of garbage. Bailey Hongzhuang clapped her hands, then turned around to look at Ji Lishua and Feng Yu. Kowtow and apologize or die. Choose one. Ji Lishua and Di Tiansong's faces were pale. They felt like scholars meeting a soldier, unable to reason with him. Aren't all the people here doctors? How many doctors were there that were so valiant? Their subordinates weren't weak either. Normally they could do whatever they wanted, but now they were dealt with in the blink of an eye. This kind of psychological difference was too unacceptable. At this moment, Ji Lishua was filled with regret and hatred. If she had known that Bailey Hongzhuang was such a difficult person to deal with, she wouldn't have taken the initiative to find trouble with her. She had originally planned to establish her prestige at this recruitment event. Previously, she had been very successful, but she did not expect to be slapped in the face. Now, almost everyone's attention in the central square was on them. This was really embarrassing. After today's incident, she was almost certain that they would become the butt of everyone's jokes. This time, she wanted to become Master Yu Xiqing's disciple. If this matter spread to Master Yu Xiqing's ears, wouldn't her image be greatly damaged? Thinking of this, Ji Lishua felt that things were really terrible. Chapter 2547. Bailey Hongzhuang was too lazy to talk nonsense with Ji Lishua. She had originally planned to keep a low profile and enter the Yu clan through the recruitment ceremony. Once she entered the Yu clan, it would be much easier for her to complete her task. During this period of time, although Yu Tian City had been open to the public, the Yu clan's security was much stricter than usual. Because the current Yu Tian City was very complicated, there was no lack of people like Bailey Hongzhuang who harbored evil intentions. Therefore the Yu clan was patrolling day and night. Anyone who got close to the Yu clan would be questioned or even warned. Therefore it was very difficult for Bailey Hongzhuang to sneak into the Yu clan. She might as well go in openly, catching the Yu clan off guard. However, after such a commotion, everyone knew that she would become famous in Yu Tian City after today. Bailey Hongzhuang would never dwell on such matters. Originally she had planned to keep a low profile. Since she could no longer keep a low profile, she would pass with a high profile. As long as she could achieve her goal, it didn't matter what the process was. Seeing that Ji Lishua and Di Tiansong did not speak for a long time, and that it was Bailey Hongzhuang's turn to enter the queue, Di Beichen gently said to Bailey Hongzhuang, "Wifey, you go in and get your number, I will take care of the rest." Hearing that, Bailey Hongzhuang nodded slightly. It was her turn now. She couldn't waste her time on these two insignificant fellows. In the next moment, Bailey Hongzhuang directly walked into the house to get her number plate. Di Beichen looked at the two dumbstruck fellows in front of him and walked up to them. Following that, amidst the two exclamations, Di Beichen directly carried Ji Lishua and Di Tiansong to the back of the line. The two people's weight fell on Di Beichen's hands, but they were carried away as if they were weightless. The surrounding crowd stared blankly at this scene and couldn't help but be dumbfounded. Cultivators were indeed powerful. This kind of strength. Doctors couldn't even fight back. After Bailey Hongzhuang entered the house, she was able to obtain her number plate very smoothly. The test was also very simple, it was only to identify medicinal herbs. As long as all the medicinal herbs were identified, one would be able to receive a number plate. Although this method was very simple, it was very effective. Only a doctor would know all of these medicinal herbs like the back of his hand and be able to differentiate them easily. After Bailey Hongzhuang obtained her identity card and walked out, she felt the gazes of all the doctors in the queue fall on her. Their expressions were filled with fear and curiosity. After all, it wasn't Bailey Hongzhuang who started this trouble, but Ji Lixue. However, after this incident, everyone knew that this seemingly ordinary woman in front of them was not someone to be trifled with. Moreover, this woman either had a powerful background or was fearless. Although the Ji clan's strength couldn't be compared to the Yu clan, they were still quite famous in this area. Bailey Hongzhuang taught Ji Lixue a lesson as soon as she made a move. With Ji Lixue's character, she definitely wouldn't let Bailey Hongzhuang off so easily. When that time came, there would be trouble. Under the complicated gazes of the crowd, Bailey Hongzhuang slowly walked out. When she saw Di Beichen again, she saw that Di Tiansong had already been beaten into a pig's head. His nose was bruised and his face was swollen. At this moment, he was looking at Di Beichen with tears in his eyes and kept saying that he wouldn't dare to do it again. Chapter 2548. When Bailey Hongzhuang saw this scene, she couldn't help but smile. She didn't expect Di Beichen to be so interesting when he was teaching people a lesson. Di Beichen looked at Bailey Hongzhuang with a smile and gave her a look, silently asking if she was satisfied with this result. If someone provoked Bailey Hongzhuang on a normal day, Di Beichen would definitely kill them without hesitation. However, they were in Yutian City now, and these two people had a certain background. If they were killed, the other party's forces would definitely come to cause trouble for them. In this way, it would be very troublesome for them to pass the recruitment ceremony. After all, it wasn't good to complicate matters. Bailey Hongzhuang naturally understood the meaning of Di Beichen's actions. In fact, she didn't care about these two people at all. She just wanted to teach them a lesson and stop causing trouble for them. Of course, the premise was that these two people were tactful enough to stop causing trouble for them. When Di Tiansong and Ji Lixue saw Bailey Hongzhuang, a trace of fear appeared in their eyes. They had been taught a lesson by Di Beichen just now, but they didn't know how Bailey Hongzhuang planned to deal with them. Bailey Hongzhuang looked at them indifferently and said, "Do you still dare to cause trouble for me in the future?" As soon as the words came out, Di Tiansong and Ji Lixue shook their heads like a rattled drum. Today's matter, they had already suffered a big loss. If they went to find trouble with Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen, the two of them would be seeking their own deaths. Moreover, although their families had a certain amount of influence in this area, they didn't bring many people this time, so it wasn't considered revenge. Most importantly, they just wanted to leave this place as soon as possible. The surrounding mocking gazes made them want to find a hole to hide in. Seeing this, Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen looked at each other and walked towards the restaurant together. Di Tiansong and Ji Lixue heaved a sigh of relief when they saw Bailey Hongzhuang and Ji Lixue leave. They didn't want to kill them. Di Tiansong and Ji Lixue didn't have the face to stay here any longer, so they quickly went to the restaurant they were staying in. Although receiving a number plate was very important, at the very least, they didn't have the courage to stay in front of so many people. When Bailey Hongzhuang returned to the restaurant, it was still very quiet. The others were obviously still in the central square. "Wife, what number did you receive?" Di Beichen smiled warmly. Although something had just happened, it didn't ruin their mood. Bailey Hongzhuang smiled. Her smile was filled with emotion. "Number 169, there's really a lot of people lining up. Based on this situation, I'm afraid there will be as many as 500 people participating in the recruitment ceremony today." Such a number was really shocking. In the Xingxian continent, cultivators made up the majority of the population, while doctors and poison masters were relatively few. For there to be 500 doctors and poison masters participating in the recruitment ceremony, it could be assumed that all those with good medical and poison skills were here. Hearing this, Di Beichen nodded. The number was even more than they had imagined. Chapter 2549. There are more doctors and poison masters participating in the preliminary round, but I believe that there will be fewer people entering the finals. Di Beichen's deep eyes were filled with wisdom. This time, all the poison masters and doctors know that the Yu family will recruit more people than usual, so almost everyone with some ability has come. However, even if the Yu family is in urgent need of manpower, they will not recruit people casually. Bailey Hongzhuang nodded lightly. It seems that the preliminary round will take a few days. According to her understanding, the recruitment event's preliminary round was originally going to be held today. However, when the Yu clan's people saw that there were actually so many people receiving their tokens today, they decided to set today as the day to receive their tokens. The real preliminary round would only be held tomorrow. This was what she heard when she received her queue number. From the looks of it, she might not even be able to get her turn as number 169 tomorrow. In this regard, Bailey Hongzhuang was not in a hurry. The recruitment event would end in 10 days at most. She just had to wait here. Master, if we let those two guys go just like that, will they not know what's good for them and come looking for trouble again? Xiao He frowned slightly. Just by looking at Ji Lixue and Di Beichen's appearance, she knew that they were arrogant and domineering people. Now that they had been bullied like this, they would not let it go. If it were not for the fact that everyone was watching, Di Beichen would have already taken their lives. It could only be said that the two of them were lucky. However, if they took advantage of the night to kill the two of them, it would be easy. Bailey Hongzhuang thought for a moment and said, Ji Lixue and Di Beichen only have a certain amount of power around here. However, no matter what power they have, they only value cultivators. As for doctors, although they pay attention to them, I can be sure that Ji Lixue's status in the Ji family is definitely not high. Now that such a thing has happened, Ji Lixue has embarrassed the entire Ji family. I believe that she is not willing to spread this matter back to the family. I'm afraid that she won't dare to cause trouble directly. Di Beichen's lips curled into a confident smile. Just from Di Tiansong and Ji Lixue's previous performance, he was certain that his judgment was not wrong. Even if they want to cause trouble, they will at most cause some trouble during the competition. They won't be able to cause any waves. Bailey Hongzhuang's expression was indifferent. She was determined to win the recruitment assembly this time. Moreover, with her medical and poison skills, it wouldn't be difficult for her to successfully enter the Yu clan. On the contrary, if Di Tiansong and Ji Lixue died today, everyone would suspect them. Perhaps if the two of them were wronged, the family members would not step forward. However, if the two of them died, things would become much more troublesome. Moreover, this Ji clan was originally a clan near the Yu clan, so they must have had some dealings with the Yu clan. Once things had developed to this point, it would not be easy for Bailey Hongzhuang to enter the Yu clan again. The three beasts nodded after hearing Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen's words. Since they had already made a decision, they would not have any objections. After today's incident, Bailey Hongzhuang's mood was not affected at all. On the contrary, it was very good. Chapter 2550. After Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen caused such a ruckus today, their reputation quickly spread throughout Yutian City. Everyone knew that a couple had taught Ji Lixue and Di Tiansong a lesson in front of everyone, two people that no one dared to provoke normally. Moreover, these two people were very powerful. They took care of all the thugs in the blink of an eye. In the end, Ji Lixue and Di Tiansong could only leave with their tails between their legs. For a moment, everyone was talking about Di Beichen and Bailey Hongzhuang. However, these two people had kept a low profile and weren't familiar with anyone, so no one even knew their names. However, in the blink of an eye, everyone had already regarded Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen as people that they couldn't afford to provoke. Even someone like Ji Lixue had suffered a loss at their hands. If anyone else dared to provoke them, they would really be courting death. Many people were inquiring about Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Tiansong's true identity, but they didn't get a definite answer in the end. When Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen came to the restaurant's main hall to eat, they found that the originally bustling restaurant instantly quieted down. Everyone lowered their heads and ate quietly, but they couldn't help but look at Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Tiansong from the corner of their eyes. Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen couldn't help but look at each other. It seemed that their actions today were indeed very sensational. The two originally planned to eat in the restaurant's main hall, but after seeing this scene, they gave up on the idea and directly ordered the food back to their rooms. If they continued to eat in the restaurant's main hall, they were afraid that everyone around them would feel uncomfortable eating. The three beasts were very satisfied with this result. This way they could eat their fill. Ji Lixue and Di Tiansong were extremely depressed. Originally they were very imposing in Yutian City, but today they had become a joke. First, they were taught a lesson by Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Tiansong. Then they had to queue up again to get their number plates. It was really sad. After the two of them returned to the restaurant, they didn't come out because it was too embarrassing. Even though he was standing by the window, he could still hear the discussions of the pedestrians downstairs. Tiansong, what is the background of those two? How dare they treat us like this? When I think about the upcoming competition, I feel that I don't have the face to appear in front of others. Ji Lixue couldn't hide her embarrassment. She had never been so embarrassed in her entire life. This time, the whole family had high hopes for her when she came to participate in the recruitment. In their eyes, her success was inevitable. This should have been a glorious matter, but because of today's matter, there was a stain. If Master Yu Siqing knew about this matter, how would she feel? Thinking of this, Ji Lishua was furious. Di Tianzong shook his head and frowned. I've already sent people to inquire about them, but no one knows where they came from. Even their names have yet to be found. I think these two people should be doctors from other places. They don't have any background. Di Tianzong was also very helpless. Today's matter really made him lose face. Hearing Di Tianzong's words, Ji Lishua's face was full of disbelief. Chapter 2551. Logically speaking, if these two people did not have any background, they would not have the guts to confront them head-on. Therefore, Ji Lishua did not believe Di Tianzong's words at all. Di Tianzong shrugged. In fact, he also found this answer hard to believe. Perhaps their background was not simple, but they had not found out yet. Lishua, in my opinion, we shouldn't make an enemy out of them. If they really have a background, I'm afraid we'll be at a disadvantage if we look for trouble again. Di Tianzong's face was full of worry. He really could not figure out the real identity of these two people. The reason for that was because the aura emitted by his opponent was simply too domineering. Even if they did not have any background, their strength was not to be underestimated. If they looked for trouble again, they would probably lose their lives before they could deal with the other party. After all, some desperados were very terrifying once they went crazy. Di Tianzong had seen such people before. As the saying went, those who were barefooted were not afraid of those who were wearing shoes. Both of them still had a bright future ahead of them. There was no need to put themselves in danger because of this matter. Ji Lishua nodded after hearing Di Tianzong's words. Although today's matter had made them lose face, at least they were safe and sound. From Di Beichen's behavior, it was fortunate that they did not do anything to Bailey Hongzhuang. Otherwise, Di Beichen would have killed them directly. Just recalling Di Beichen's eyes was enough to make her feel terrified. She really did not want to have any dealings with them. You're right. Let's leave it at that. I believe that after we show our strength in the competition, everyone will forget about what happened before. As a member of the family, Ji Lishua understood this very well since she was young. Everyone liked to watch a good show, but when something new happened, everyone's attention would be quickly diverted. She believed that even if this matter caused a sensation, it would not affect them for too long. The next day, the long-awaited preliminary round of the recruitment meet finally began. Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen also got up early and headed to the central square. Up until now, they still didn't have any understanding of how the preliminaries worked. It was said that every time the recruitment assembly was held, the competition method would be different. And this time, the recruitment assembly was especially important to the Yu clan. Presumably, the competition method would also be unique. As Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen walked through the crowd, numerous gazes fell upon them. These two are still alive. Looks like Ji Lishua and the others didn't take their revenge yesterday. That should be the case. However, the strength of these two people is not simple. I think they must be very powerful experts. That's right. Did you see their fight with your own eyes yesterday? In just the blink of an eye, he took care of so many thugs. His strength is really amazing. Since you're already an expert, why did you participate in the recruitment meet? Could it be that all the experts have started to practice medicine? The crowd discussed animatedly, some of them unable to understand. One must know that there were very few doctors among the cultivators. What's more, these two people were true experts and they even became doctors. This was even more strange. Chapter 2552. When Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen arrived at the central square, they found that the Yu clan had already set up the high platform in the central square. However, when Bailey Hongzhuang saw the rows of seats that appeared on the high platform, her eyes could not help but flash with a touch of doubt. There were hundreds of seats on the high platform. At first glance, it was very shocking. Could it be that the preliminary round is a test? Bailey Hongzhuang's dark eyes flashed with surprise. Previously, she had thought of many ways to compete, but such a test was really beyond her expectations. There were many competitions in the same continent, but a test like this was only used during the imperial examination. However, after thinking about it carefully, Bailey Hongzhuang felt that the Yu clan's method of competition was very good. This way they could solve the problem of having too many participants and save a lot of time. Looking at the situation, the Yu clan is preparing to let everyone participate in today's preliminary round. Di Beichen said slowly. Bailey Hongzhuang's gaze swept across the high platform. Although many people from the Yu clan appeared here, she did not see Yu Siqing. Not only that, she also did not see Lan Jingquang and Yu Manlan. It seemed that Yu Siqing was still treating Lan Qingyan. Yu Siqing would not appear until the final round. After Bailey Hongzhuang appeared, she found that there were two gazes in the crowd on her. She swept her gaze across them. Who else could it be other than Ji Lixue and Di Beichen? Ji Lixue and Di Tiansong did not expect Bailey Hongzhuang's reaction to be so fast. They only took a glance and Bailey Hongzhuang had already discovered their existence. Seeing this, the two of them could not help but rejoice in their hearts. From this point they could see that Bailey Hongzhuang's strength was astonishing. Fortunately they did not act rashly yesterday. Otherwise the outcome would be unpredictable. The two of them immediately lowered their heads, not daring to look at Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen again. Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen naturally noticed the changes in Ji Lixue and Di Beichen, and the corners of their lips slowly widened. It seemed that their judgment was not wrong. Ji Lixue and Di Beichen did not dare to find trouble with them again. "Lixue, so you're here." Just as Ji Lixue was wondering if Bailey Hongzhuang continued to pay attention to her, a slightly happy voice entered her ears. Hearing this, Ji Lixue could not help but raise her head to look at the person behind her. In front of her was a man in a yellow brocade robe. He was about 23 years old and had a dignified appearance. At this moment he was looking at Ji Lixue with a smile. After Di Tiansong saw the man, his expression couldn't help but change a little. Then a thick smile appeared on his face, vaguely revealing a hint of flattery. "You. Seventh. You. Was you." Although Di Tiansong thought that his identity was not bad in front of Yu Ruilin, he was nothing. As the seventh young master of the Yu clan, Yu Ruilin's medical skills were also very good. Not only that, Yu Ruilin was also interested in Ji Lixue. Di Tiansong also wanted to pursue Ji Lixue, but after knowing Yu Ruilin's plan he gave up the idea. Chapter 2553. Yu Ruilin nodded at Di Tiansong, but his expression was filled with disdain. He had known Di Tiansong for some time, so he was very clear about Di Tiansong's previous thoughts. However, Di Tiansong had wisely chosen to give up after Yu Ruilin had expressed his thoughts. Although it was a smart choice, Yu Ruilin still looked down on Di Tiansong. After all, as a man, it was too cowardly to give up the woman he liked so easily. When Ji Lixue saw Yu Ruilin again she was stunned at first, but then she bowed to Yu Ruilin. "Young Master Yu Lixue, since you came to Yutian City, why didn't you contact me earlier? I can arrange for you to stay in the Yu clan directly. You don't have to stay in a restaurant." Yu Ruilin was full of smiles, and he did not hide his intentions when he looked at Ji Lixue. Ji Lixue smiled, but her smile was filled with helplessness. "Young Master Yu is too polite. I haven't passed the recruitment ceremony yet, so it's not appropriate for me to stay in the Yu clan. It's easy for you to enter the Yu clan, so why do you have to pass the recruitment ceremony? As long as you marry me, none of this will be a problem." Ji Lixue's expression changed when she heard this, and she subconsciously looked at Di Tiansong. She already knew Yu Ruilin's thoughts, but she did not like him. As far as she knew, although Yu Ruilin's medical skills were not bad, he was also a bully. Although they were not officially married, he already had many maids serving him. She really did not want to have anything to do with Yu Ruilin. Moreover, the person she liked since she was young was Di Tiansong. However, Di Tiansong turned a blind eye to Ji Lixue's gaze, and he was still full of smiles. "Lixue, young Master Yu is right. Why do you have to work so hard?" Ji Lixue's expression turned ugly when she heard Di Tiansong's words. At this time, not only did Di Tiansong not help her out, but he also agreed with Yu Ruilin. This made her very sad. In fact, she had always felt this. In the past, Di Tiansong clearly liked her, but ever since Yu Ruilin appeared, Di Tiansong began to avoid her. She had wanted to ask Di Tiansong, but as a woman, how could she express her feelings so clearly? It was because of this that when she saw how well Di Beichen treated Bailey Hongzhuang, she could not help but feel jealous. That was why she had mocked Bailey Hongzhuang. However, in her heart, she knew very well that her words were completely out of envy and jealousy. "Lixue understands young Master Yu's good intentions, but I just want to pass the recruitment." Ji Lixue's expression was calm, but her eyes were filled with disappointment. At this point there was no point in saying anything more. From Di Tiansong's behavior, it was clear that he had made up his mind. Ji Lixue stood alone on the other side with a cold expression. She clearly had no intention of continuing the conversation. Yu Ruilin couldn't help but frown when he saw her like this. Although Ji Lixue was usually cold to him, it wasn't to this extent. What was going on today? Chapter 2554. Young Master Yu, there's a reason why Le Shui is so unhappy. Di Tiansong said slowly. What's the reason? Yu Ruilin raised his eyebrows. Could it be that something had happened? Le Shui was wronged. Hearing Di Tiansong's words, Yu Ruilin's eyes flashed with surprise. There are people in Yutian City who dare to offend Le Shui? Yesterday, when Le Shui was receiving her number plate, she had a conflict with a woman. Then she was taught a lesson by the woman and her husband. She was greatly wronged. Therefore Le Shui was not in a good mood the whole day. Di Tiansong told Yu Ruilin about what had happened yesterday with exaggerated details. The other party's attitude was very arrogant. Young Master Yu, look at the wounds on my face. They were left behind by them. Yu Ruilin glanced at Di Tiansong. Di Tiansong's face was indeed covered with many scars. Yu Ruilin found his bruised and swollen face very interesting and wanted to ridicule him. He did not expect that Le Shui was also bullied in Yutian City. Who are they? How dare they? Yu Ruilin's face was full of displeasure. Le Shui was the woman he liked. The other party dared to attack his woman in his territory. It was simply outrageous. After seeing the anger on Yu Ruilin's face, Di Tiansong felt a burst of joy in his heart. When he thought about what had happened yesterday, he felt extremely angry. However, with his strength it was not easy to deal with those two people, so he could only swallow his anger. Now that Yu Ruilin had come to stand up for him, it was undoubtedly the best. Just thinking about using someone else's knife to kill someone made him happy. He had liked Le Shui for so many years, but because of Yu Ruilin he had to give up. Now, since the opportunity was in front of him, it was not in line with his character not to take advantage of it. I don't know who they are either. I only know that they live in a restaurant nearby and are now among the crowd waiting to participate in the preliminary round of the recruitment meet. When these words came out, Yu Ruilin's eyes became sharper. They dared to touch the woman he liked and wanted to participate in the recruitment meet. It was not so easy. Under Di Tiansong's guidance, Yu Ruilin quickly found Di Baichen and Bailey Hongzhuang in the crowd. Is it the two of them? Yes, young Master Yu, you must avenge Le Shui. Di Tiansong was indignant. You can leave this to me. Yu Ruilin patted his chest, was confident. But his eyes looked at Di Tiansong's contempt masters was disdainful. Yu Ruilin now was despised. Master Yu was. He couldn't? On the contrary, he now had to rely on him to solve the problem. It was really embarrassing. He believed that as long as he avenged Le Shui would definitely look at him in a new light. After all, he was the man who could protect Le Shui. Di Tiansong was just a good-for-nothing. Di Tiansong looked at Yu Ruilin's constantly changing expression and knew that Yu Ruilin had made up his mind to teach Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Baichen a lesson. He was very pleased. Chapter 2555. Le Shui stood alone at the side, watching Di Tiansong and Yu Ruilin whispering to each other. She couldn't help but frown, not knowing what they were talking about. However, Le Shui was in a very bad mood, so she wasn't in the mood to think about it. She felt that her previous thoughts were too extravagant. Judging from Di Tiansong's current attitude, she knew that he had completely given up. Facing such a Di Tiansong, Le Shui also had mixed feelings. Perhaps she should have given up long ago. Yu Ruilin slowly walked in front of Le Shui, a concerned smile on his handsome face. Le Shui, don't worry, I will definitely help you get revenge for the grievances you suffered. Le Shui couldn't help but be startled. She didn't expect Yu Ruilin to suddenly say such words to her. Without waiting for Le Shui's reply, Yu Ruilin's figure had already disappeared in front of Le Shui. It was as if he was full of confidence as he went to find Bailey Hongzhuang for revenge. Only then did Le Shui react. She hurriedly looked at Di Tiansong and said, Tiansong, did you tell young Master Yu what happened yesterday? Di Tiansong nodded and said, yes. Didn't you say that yesterday's matter was over? Now you want young Master Yu to find trouble with them. If their background is really not simple, what should we do? Le Shui's face was full of confusion. She had already talked with Di Tiansong last night, and they had both made a decision. Why did Di Tiansong tell young Master Yu about this matter now? Right now, she didn't want to connect yesterday's matter at all. She just wanted to let it go. However, Di Tiansong did indeed look indifferent. Le Shui, with our abilities, it will naturally be difficult for us to deal with them. But young Master Yu is different. He is the 7th young master of the Yu clan. Wouldn't it be easy for him to deal with them? This is the Yu clan's territory and they want to enter the Yu clan. It is undoubtedly best for us to deal with them. Di Tiansong's eyes flashed with a fierce and sinister light. He had lost face in front of everyone yesterday, and today he must get it back from Bailey Hongzhuang and Bailey Hongzhuang. Ji Lixue couldn't help frowning when she saw Di Tiansong acting like this. She understood that Di Tiansong wanted to use his power to bully others. Although this kind of revenge could let them vent their resentment, it was not relying on their own strength but on someone else. It made her feel a little uncomfortable. She felt that the Di Tiansong in front of her was no longer the person she was familiar with, because the things he did were beyond her expectations again and again. I think it's better not to complicate this matter any further. With that, Ji Lixue prepared to stop Yu Ruilin. Right now, she didn't want to care about any of this at all. She just wanted to quietly participate in this preliminary round. What happened yesterday was already very embarrassing. If Yu Ruilin went to deal with this matter today, it would undoubtedly remind everyone of what happened yesterday, and the impact would be even greater. Moreover, if Master Yu Xiqing knew about this matter, he would probably think that she had asked Yu Ruilin to stand up for her. It would be terrible if his impression of her was affected. This was what Ji Lixue cared about the most. Chapter 2556. Ji Lixue glanced at Di Tiansong with disappointment in her eyes. I'm not happy about what happened yesterday, but I don't want Yu Ruilin to avenge me. She didn't like Yu Ruilin, so she didn't want to owe him anything. Once you owed him something, you had to pay him back. However, Di Tiansong still didn't let go. Things have already come to this. Even if you stop Yu Ruilin, he won't let it go. I don't need you to meddle in my business. Ji Lixue waved Di Tiansong's hand away, the disappointment in her eyes reaching its peak. She felt that Di Tiansong didn't do it for her sake. He said that he did it for his own selfish reasons. Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen were waiting in the crowd for the preliminaries to begin. Suddenly, a group of people walked toward them aggressively. They were coming from the direction of the two. Bailey Hongzhuang raised her eyebrows. It seemed that they had made a mistake, and the other party had come to cause trouble. It seemed that this person was the helper that the other party had found. Di Beichen's deep eyes flashed coldly. He had given the other party a chance yesterday, but he didn't expect that they would dare to cause trouble today. Since that was the case, he could only deal with them together. Yu Ruilin swaggered in front of Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen. He could tell at a glance that these two were just ordinary people. Di Tiansong was a good-for-nothing, so it wasn't strange that they had beaten him into a pig's head. However, they couldn't touch Ji Lixue. Were you two the ones who bullied Lixue yesterday? Yu Ruilin stood in front of Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen. He crossed his arms and looked down at Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen. Do you know that Lixue is my woman? You must have eaten a leopard's guts to bully her. Yu Ruilin immediately declared his sovereignty. In his opinion, even if Ji Lixue hadn't agreed to him yet, Ji Lixue would be his woman sooner or later. From the moment he took a fancy to Ji Lixue couldn't run away. Hearing this, Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen looked at each other. It seemed that Ji Lixue had found her man. Who are you? Di Beichen glanced at Yu Ruilin lazily. He had to at least know the other party's identity before he dealt with him. Seeing that the other party didn't know his identity, Yu Ruilin didn't feel strange. If the other party had known his identity, he would have kowtowed and begged for mercy. I am the Yu clan's 7th young master. Now you should know who you have offended. As soon as he said this, the viciousness in Bailey Hongzhuang's eyes deepened. If the other party was someone else, she might not care so much. However, the other party was a member of the Yu clan, so he was one of her enemies. It seemed that the relationship between her and the Yu clan was not small. She hadn't taken the initiative to find trouble with the Yu clan, but the Yu clan had already come to find her. What 7th young master of the Yu clan? As long as they came to die, she wouldn't refuse them. Chapter 2557. However, the situation that Yu Ruilin expected did not happen. Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen looked at Yu Ruilin indifferently, as if his identity did not intimidate them at all. Seeing Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen's attitude, Yu Ruilin could no longer maintain his arrogance. Why didn't these two act according to common sense? When the surrounding people saw Yu Ruilin, their expressions changed. Their eyes were filled with fear and dread. The Yu clan's 7th young master has come to stand up for Ji Lixue. I'm afraid that these two are going to be in trouble. I heard that the Yu clan's 7th young master has already taken a fancy to Ji Lixue, but Ji Lixue doesn't seem to like him. Looking at the current situation, it's impossible for these two to enter the Yu clan through the recruitment assembly. For a moment, everyone could not help but sympathize with Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen. Speaking of which, this matter was completely instigated by Ji Lixue and Di Beichen. It was just that Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen's reaction was a little unexpected. They thought that Ji Lixue and Di Beichen did not intend to take revenge, but now it seemed that this revenge was more serious than they thought. Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen looked at each other. It seemed that the situation was a little out of their expectations. If the other party forced them to take their lives, then they could only find another way to enter the Yu clan. After all, this was not the only way to enter the Yu clan. Just as Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen were about to take action, Ji Lixue hurriedly walked to Yu Ruilin's side. "Lixue, you're here." When Yu Ruilin saw that Ji Lixue had arrived, a deep smile appeared on his handsome face. "The two of them were the ones who bullied you yesterday, right? Tell me, how do you want to deal with them? I'll definitely avenge you," Yu Ruilin said confidently. In the Yu clan's territory, if he wanted to deal with these two people, it was undoubtedly a simple matter. In his opinion, this was simply a heaven-sent opportunity for him to perform. When Ji Lixue saw Bailey Hongzhuang, her expression was filled with guilt and embarrassment. If possible, she really didn't want to see Bailey Hongzhuang and Lin Yiqin ever again. Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen looked at Ji Lixue calmly. They wanted to know how Ji Lixue was going to deal with them. However, Ji Lixue's performance once again exceeded everyone's expectations. "Young Master Yu, thank you for your kind intentions. However, this matter has already been settled. I hope that you will not be entangled in this matter." Ji Lixue's attitude was very clear. She would rather suffer a loss than continue to blow this matter up. Most importantly, she was unwilling to accept Yu Ruilin's kindness. Hearing Ji Lixue's words, Yu Ruilin's expression changed slightly as a trace of doubt appeared in his eyes. "Lixue, you don't have to be afraid. With me here, no one can bully you." Ji Lixue shook her head stubbornly. "I didn't suffer any grievances. I hope, young master, you won't take this matter to heart." "Master, what's the situation with Ji Lixue now? She actually took the initiative to stand up and reject?" Xiao Hei's eyes were filled with doubt. This didn't match Ji Lixue's character yesterday. "I don't know what's going on either. I'm afraid there's some other reason behind this," Bailey Hongzhuang said telepathically. However, since the situation had changed, she didn't mind continuing to watch. Chapter 2558. "I heard from Tiansong that you're in a bad mood because these people bullied you." Yu Ruilin frowned as anxiety appeared on his face. He didn't understand why Ji Lixue would say such a thing. Bailey Hongzhuang and the others finally understood after hearing Yu Ruilin's words. It turned out that Ji Lixue wasn't the one who started it but Di Tiansong. Bailey Hongzhuang raised her eyebrows. It seemed that Di Tiansong wanted to use someone else to do his dirty work. If Ji Lixue hadn't stopped them, they would have blamed everything on Ji Lixue and Yu Ruilin. I didn't think that Di Tiansong was such a despicable person. Xiao Bai's eyes flashed with disgust. They hated Ji Lixue the most after yesterday's incident and didn't feel much about Di Tiansong's group. However, judging from the current situation, Di Tiansong was even more despicable than Ji Lixue. Ji Lixue also felt uncomfortable as everyone looked at her in confusion. She immediately explained, "Young Master Yu, it's not like that. I'm not in a bad mood and it's not because of them. The preliminaries are about to begin and I'm just a little nervous." Yu Ruilin didn't know what to say when he saw how determined Ji Lixue was. He only glanced at Bailey Hongzhuang and Xiao Bai. Judging from the situation, he could only give up on revenge. "Young Master Yu, let's go back first." Ji Lixue didn't want to stay here any longer. She immediately grabbed Yu Ruilin's arm and wanted to leave. Yu Ruilin didn't want to give up, but the moment Ji Lixue grabbed his arm, that thought disappeared from his mind. Ever since he had met Ji Lixue, she had never been so close to him. No matter what, it was worth it. After Ji Lixue, Yu Ruilin and the others left, the surroundings quieted down again. Bailey Hongzhuang looked in the direction Ji Lixue and the others left. Her gaze changed slightly. She felt that Ji Lixue looked very different today. Yesterday, Ji Lixue had been spoiled and domineering, but today she seemed to have suffered a great grievance. It was really interesting. "Master, I don't think it's that simple. Why don't I follow them and take a look?" Xiao Hei's eyes were filled with excitement. It was very interested in such things. Most importantly, it wanted to know how Di Tiansong would react when he saw the scene being stopped. Hearing that, Bailey Hongzhuang nodded and said, "Go." After receiving Bailey Hongzhuang's approval, Xiao Hei immediately followed after Ji Lixue. Thinking about it, Yu Ruilin would definitely ask Ji Lishue the real reason later, then it would be able to know the ins and outs of this matter. This is really interesting. In comparison, Ji Lishue's attitude is rather unfathomable. Di Beichen's expression was calm. Even if something like that had just happened, it did not affect him at all. It was just that the situation was rather interesting. Bailey Hongzhuang shrugged. Xiao He will report to us in a while. With Xiao He's size, no one would be able to discover it after it had shrunk. Chapter 2559. Di Tiansong's face darkened when he saw that Ji Lishue had stopped Yu Ruilin from taking revenge. Ji Lishue's actions had put him in an awkward position. Yu Ruilin would definitely ask him what was going on, and it might even cause Yu Ruilin's displeasure. Di Tiansong was extremely depressed when he thought of this. Such a good opportunity had been ruined just like that. Lishue, are you really not unhappy because of them? Yu Ruilin asked Ji Lishue. He had a feeling that things were not so simple. Moreover, when he went to look for trouble, he had heard the discussions around him. There must have been a conflict between Ji Lishue and the two people yesterday. Ji Lishue shook her head. She knew Yu Ruilin's character. If she said yes, then Yu Ruilin would definitely not give up looking for trouble with Bailey Hongzhuang and the other person. When she saw Bailey Hongzhuang and the other person just now, the fear she felt was even more obvious. She felt that these two people were definitely not ordinary people, and it was better not to offend them. Moreover, yesterday's matter had already been laughed at, so why bring it up again now? Young Master Yu, I'm really fine. I just want to participate in this recruitment assembly properly and enter the Yu clan legitimately. I hope you can help me. Ji Lishue stared at Yu Ruilin. Although she did not have a good impression of Yu Ruilin, she was still grateful that Yu Ruilin was willing to stand up for her just now. Hearing Ji Lishue's words, Yu Ruilin nodded and said, I understand. Lishue, don't worry. With your medical skills, you definitely won't have a problem passing the recruitment assembly. A smile appeared on Ji Lishue's face. Thank you, young Master Yu. I'll go and prepare now. The preliminaries are about to begin. Okay, I'll see you after your competition. After Ji Lishue left, Yu Ruilin went to look for Di Tiansong. He was very unhappy that Di Tiansong dared to lie to him about this matter. When Di Tiansong saw Yu Ruilin walking towards him with an unfriendly expression, his heart sank. Without waiting for Yu Ruilin to ask him, he took the initiative to explain. Young Master Yu, I'm telling the truth. However, Yu Ruilin looked at Di Tiansong coldly. Nonsense, Lishue doesn't care about this at all. Young Master Yu, I guarantee that I am speaking the truth. Lishue was just afraid of those two people, so she didn't want to get into trouble. Think about it, today is the Yu clan's exhibition conference. If you attack the people who are participating in the recruitment conference, wouldn't that damage your reputation? I think Lishue must have compromised because of this. If you don't believe me, you can ask around. Everyone knows what happened yesterday. Hearing Di Tiansong's explanation, Yu Ruilin's expression became better. After all, as the seventh young master of the Yu clan, if he came back without doing anything after going to look for Yu Yang in such an aggressive manner, it would really damage his reputation. However, if Ji Lishue was doing this for his sake, then everything would be different. That better be the case. If you lie to me, you should know the consequences. Yu Ruilin spat out these words and turned to leave. He wanted to investigate this matter himself. Chapter 2560. With Yu Ruilin's departure, Di Tiansong looked at Ji Lishue in the distance with a hint of annoyance. This was supposed to be killing two birds with one stone, but Ji Lishue had ruined it, and now he was the one who had gotten himself into trouble. Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen already knew that he was the one behind it, and Yu Ruilin was suspicious and dissatisfied with him. He had originally planned to push all the blame to Yu Ruilin and Ji Lishue and stay out of it, but he didn't expect that all the trouble would come to him. Thinking of this, Di Tiansong didn't dare to look at Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen. He only hoped that they wouldn't be angry because of this. Ji Lishue had Yu Ruilin's support in the Yu clan's territory, but Di Tiansong had nothing. After understanding the situation with Di Tiansong, Xiao He didn't immediately report to Bailey Hongzhuang, but followed behind Ji Lishue. It felt that Ji Lishue still had a lot of stories. Since it was already here, it naturally had to figure out everything before reporting back. After thinking about it, Di Tiansong still went to find Ji Lishue. He really didn't understand why Ji Lishue wanted to ruin his show and put him in such an awkward situation. Lishue, what did you mean by doing that? Di Tiansong looked at Ji Lishue with an angry face. He didn't understand why Ji Lishue put him in such a situation. Ji Lishue's mood was already very bad, and now that Di Tiansong actually came to criticize her, the anger in her heart was self-evident. You still have the nerve to ask me what I mean? I want to ask you what you mean. What do I mean? Di Tiansong frowned. What can I mean? Don't I want to take revenge for you? Take revenge for me? Ji Lishue sneered, and the coldness in her eyes gradually condensed into ice. I think you want to take revenge for yourself? I don't need you to think for me. Seeing Ji Lishue's attitude, Di Tiansong's face instantly darkened. Yesterday's conflict was caused by you. Now that someone can take revenge for you, you're still not happy? Instead, you're blaming everything on me. What's wrong with you? I'm fine. Ji Lishue's voice was filled with anger. She felt aggrieved about what had happened yesterday, but she had never thought of asking Yu Ruilin to avenge her. Di Tiansong, you know that I don't want to have anything to do with Yu Ruilin, but you still ask Yu Ruilin to do these things for me. You know what you are thinking. I admit that I've always liked you, but now you're giving me to someone else? Aren't you being a little too simple-minded? Huai Ji Lishue, marry in the future is not something you can decide. In the future, you'd better not appear in front of me again. Let's just pretend that we've never met. Ji Lishue didn't even want to look at Di Tiansong after saying that. She turned around and walked toward the entrance of the preliminaries. After today's incident, she finally saw through Di Tiansong. In fact, ever since Yu Ruilin appeared, she had gradually discovered that Di Tiansong was gradually becoming different from the person she liked. It was just that she was unwilling to admit it. Now that everything was laid out in front of her, she could no longer deceive herself. Chapter 2561. Di Tiansong stared blankly at Ji Lishue's departing figure. He did not expect Ji Lishue to suddenly say something like that. However, the disgust and determination in Ji Lishue's words made him feel a stab of pain in his heart. He could feel the deep disappointment, and when Ji Lishue admitted that she had been in love with him all these years, he was shocked. However, Di Tiansong quickly regained his composure. He did like Ji Lishue, but what was the use? From the moment Yu Ruilin fell in love with Ji Lishue, everything was meaningless. He could not compete with Yu Ruilin at all, so he might as well use this to please Yu Ruilin, and he would have a better future. Xiao Hei's eyes widened. The scene in front of it was really beyond its expectations. It did not expect to see such an emotional drama after following it here. However, Di Tiansong was too much of a jerk. Because of the other party's power, he even gave up the woman he liked? Was he still a man? Soon, Xiao Hei told Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen everything it knew. After knowing all this, Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen also understood. No wonder she was so angry when she saw us being lovey-dovey yesterday. It turns out that she was jealous. Di Beichen raised his eyebrows and looked at Bailey Hongzhuang with a faint smile. His devilishly handsome appearance exuded a fatal temptation. Bailey Hongzhuang understood Di Beichen's thoughts just by looking at his eyes. The corners of her lips could not help but curl up. She did not expect that their public display of affection would provoke someone. At this moment, Bailey Hongzhuang and the others understood why Ji Lishue was so angry. In comparison, it was understandable. I feel a little sorry for Ji Lishue now. Di Tiansong is obviously not responsible at all. He is not as reliable as Yu Ruilin. Her beautiful eyes showed a touch of coldness. From Bailey Hongzhuang's point of view, Yu Ruilin was definitely more reliable than Di Tiansong. At least, Yu Ruilin dared to stand up for the woman he liked when she was bullied. However, Di Tiansong didn't even have the courage to stand up for himself. On the contrary, he wanted to use others to help him vent his anger. What a coward. After today's incident, Ji Lishue has seen Di Tiansong's true colors. She has jumped out of the fire pit. Di Beichen looked indifferent. He didn't care about other people's affairs, but he had to deal with Di Tiansong. Ji Lishue's judgment of people naturally can't compare to Master's. Baisher looked at Bailey Hongzhuang with a smile. Master and Di Beichen were a match made in heaven. Hearing Baisher's words, Di Beichen reached out and stroked Baisher's head. The smile in his eyes gradually deepened. Baisher is getting better and better at talking. Baisher raised his head proudly. Of course. Just as Bailey Hongzhuang and the others were laughing, a voice suddenly came from the high platform. The noisy central plaza instantly quietened down. Welcome everyone to Yutian City to participate in the Yu Clan's recruitment event. As soon as the words came out, a deafening applause came from below the high platform. Next, let us welcome the Yu Clan's clan leader, Yu Taotian, to host today's preliminaries. Chapter 2562. The Yu clan's clan head wasn't someone that could be casually seen. Thus, everyone's gaze was focused on him. They wanted to see what kind of demeanor the illustrious Yu clan head had. In their line of sight, they saw a man dressed in an ink-colored brocade robe slowly walking up the stage surrounded by a group of people. The man's figure was tall and straight, his back as straight as a spear. His eyes were bright and sharp. Even with just a glance, one could feel his terrifying aura and intimidating power. Only the gray hair at his temples made him seem more weathered. However, from his outstanding silhouette, one could vaguely see that he must have been a handsome man when he was young. However, just as everyone's attention was on the Yu clan head, Bailey Hongzhuang's gaze was fixed on the figure on Yu Taoyan's left. The man was about 40 years old. His figure was tall and sturdy. His handsome face wasn't as elegant as a youth's, but more mature and resolute. His pitch-black eyes were like a bottomless abyss, faintly revealing a sinister vibe like that of a venomous snake. As soon as Bailey Hongzhuang saw the man, she could already tell that he was Lan Jingquang. As brothers, Lan Jingquang and Lan Yunxiao naturally had similarities. At the very least, they were both tall and handsome men. However, Lan Jingquang didn't have Lan Yunxiao's magnanimity and elegance. Instead, he had a malicious and deep aura. Bailey Hongzhuang finally met this uncle who had killed his own people and caused her entire family to be in such a state. Come to think of it, no matter who looked at the radiant and elegant man on the high platform, they would not be able to associate him with those despicable and sinister things. Bailey Hongzhuang narrowed her phoenix eyes, a trace of coldness quietly imprinted in her eyes. This kind of glory wouldn't accompany Lan Jingquang for much longer. Soon Lan Jingquang would forever sink into darkness and pain. A strong murderous aura spread in Bailey Hongzhuang's heart. That kind of hatred had been hidden in her heart for so long that it was almost uncontrollable. Actually, among all her enemies, Lan Jingquang was the one she couldn't forgive the most. Because no one else was related to them by blood, but Lan Jingquang had always been Lan Yunxiao's beloved big brother. Just as Bailey Hongzhuang was about to lose control of the murderous aura pouring out of her body, Di Beichen's hand slowly wrapped around Bailey Hongzhuang's shoulder. The warm embrace pulled Bailey Hongzhuang out of her previous negative and violent emotions. Bailey Hongzhuang raised her head and saw Di Beichen's warm smile. She relaxed a little. He won't be in the limelight for much longer. Di Beichen whispered into Bailey Hongzhuang's ear. He understood Bailey Hongzhuang. When facing such an enemy, no one would be able to control their emotions. If Lan Yunxiao and Mu Lingbing were the ones standing here, they would be even more uncontrollable. Bailey Hongzhuang nodded and withdrew from her previous state. Now wasn't the time to expose herself. On the stage, Lan Jingquang furrowed his brows. Just now, he had felt a murderous aura pressing towards him, but before he could pinpoint its exact location, it had already disappeared. It was truly strange. He rarely came to the Yu family, so logically speaking, there shouldn't be any enemies here. Welcome everyone to the recruitment assembly. This old man will be the host for today's preliminaries. I hope everyone can get good results. Chapter 2563. Thunderous applause resounded. Everyone below the stage looked at Yu Taotian with respect and reverence. The Yu clan master was such a powerful existence. Being able to participate in the recruitment assembly hosted by the Yu clan master was also a matter of honor. Yu Taotian looked at the lively scene around him and the smile in his eyes became even more intense. Although the Yu clan had met with an unforeseen event, the Yu clan's prestige was still the same as before. As long as they could recruit more outstanding seedlings this time, the Yu clan's vitality would be able to recover very quickly. I see that everyone has been waiting for a long time. This old man will not say any unnecessary words. Let the preliminary round of the recruitment assembly begin immediately. Yu Taotian waved his sleeves and announced the start of the preliminary round. Then he sat down on the stage. The Yu clan great elder followed up and said, since the number of doctors and poison masters participating in the preliminary round is much more than before, the preliminary round of the recruitment assembly this time will be conducted through an examination. As everyone can see, we have already prepared the venue and items for the examination. The questions were set by Master Yu Siqing. Everyone only needs to answer them. Anyone who reaches 60 points will be considered to have passed the preliminary round. You will be awarded 1 point, 70 points and above will be awarded 2 points, 80 points and above will be awarded 3 points, 90 points and above will be awarded 4 points and above 95 points will be awarded 5 points. After that, every additional point will be awarded 1 point. The person who gets full marks will be awarded 10 points. The results of the examination will be announced tomorrow. At that time, everyone can check their results on the ranking board. Hearing the method of the competition, the crowd below the stage started to discuss fervently. Everyone had thought of many kinds of competitions, but they never thought that there would be such a test. They were astonished and curious at the same time. I wonder what will be tested. Could it be the identification of medicinal herbs and diagnosis methods? This question was set by Master Yu Siqing. I'm afraid it won't be easy. However, as long as one can pass the preliminary round with 60 points, I think it shouldn't be too difficult. I think so too. 60 points is just a passing mark. One will definitely pass easily. The doctors and poison masters who were about to participate in the competition were full of confidence. It seemed that their judgment was indeed correct. The Yu clan was currently recruiting talents. Therefore, even the method of the competition had become much simpler. After all, it wasn't easy to pass the preliminary round of the previous recruitment conventions. Some of the doctors and poison masters who wanted to make up the numbers also had smiles on their faces. Even if they couldn't pass the recruitment, as long as they passed the preliminary round, it was a result worth mentioning. Master, this test looks very simple. You'll only get 1 point out of 60. I think many people will probably score more than 90, right? Xiao He, Xiao Bai, and Bai Shi had already returned to the Chaos Ring. However, they were still aware of the situation in the outside world. The scores in front are too low. If you want to get good results, you have to score high, Xiao Bai said. Bailey Hongzhuang narrowed her eyes flashing with a thoughtful and silent light. This question was set by Yu Siqing. I don't think it's that simple. She and Yu Siqing had also crossed swords in the field of medicine and poison, and Yu Siqing's knowledge in this area was definitely very impressive. Since she came up with such a question, she must have enough confidence to filter out good doctors and poison masters through this method. Chapter 2564. Everyone thought that the Yu clan needed to recruit a large number of people this time, so the conditions would be relaxed. However, according to Bailey Hongzhuang's judgment, things wouldn't be so simple. The Yu clan was able to stand tall in the Xingqian continent for so many years because they had their own family rules. Although they had suffered a great loss last time, they wouldn't be so desperate that they wouldn't be picky. After all, this would affect them even more. This was because the Yu clan's doctors and poison masters wouldn't always stay in the Yu clan. They would be sent to various powers. Di Beichen's thoughts were the same as Bailey Hongzhuang's. I'm afraid there won't be many people who will be able to pass 60 marks. This 60 marks could be a threshold. Some questions would be enough to exclude people who didn't have a solid foundation from passing 60 marks, while doctors and poison masters who had a solid foundation would be able to pass with high marks. Bailey Hongzhuang smiled. Looks like this recruitment event won't disappoint us. Now the participating doctors and poison masters can go up the stage and find your seat to take the test. Following the Yu clan great elder's words, the people below the stage rushed up the stage. Bailey Hongzhuang looked at Di Beichen beside her and said, I'm going to take the test too. Good luck. Di Beichen's lips curled into a gentle smile. Even though his appearance had changed, his outstanding temperament was still captivating. Bailey Hongzhuang also walked up the stage. Many people had already found their seats, and Bailey Hongzhuang also found the seat of number 169 after some searching. Among the many participants, Bailey Hongzhuang's seat was considered to be in the front. Although the doctors and poison masters were taking the test together, Bailey Hongzhuang also noticed that the poison masters were in a separate area. Presumably, the questions would be different. The recruitment event this time is really bustling. I'm sure there will be many outstanding doctors and poison masters. Lan Jinghuang said to Yu Taotian with a face full of smiles as he looked at the people who were preparing for the exam. Yu Taotian was already in a good mood. Now that he heard Lan Jing's wild agreement, he couldn't help but feel even more pleased. Indeed, the recruitment assembly this time is even more grand, and Siqing's reputation is becoming more and more resounding. Ant's medical and poison skills are truly astonishing. I'm afraid that no one in the entire Xingqian continent can compare to you. Lan Jinghuang was not stingy with his flattery, but there was a cold glint in his eyes. The Yu clan's strength really couldn't be underestimated. After these years of development and expansion, the Yu clan had become more and more formidable. Because of this, the Yu clan had been demanding more and more from him in recent years. He was already impatient, but he couldn't show it. Currently, his position in the Lan clan had already stabilized, but he still needed the backing of the Yu clan to intimidate them. With regards to Yu Xiqing, this disgusting woman, if he could, he really didn't want to bother with her at all. Everyone in front of her felt that Yu Xiqing was a master in their hearts. But if they really saw Yu Xiqing, they would know how stupid their thoughts were. Chapter 2565. Lan Jinghuang hid his emotions very well, but Bailey Hongzhuang did not miss the sinister look in his eyes. Lan Qingyan's condition had not improved at all. Presumably, Lan Jinghuang's people were already frustrated to the point of no return. Bailey Hongzhuang's lips curled up. Lan Jinghuang liked to pretend so much in the past, so why not wear this hypocritical mask and continue pretending? Actually, it was also a kind of pain to not be able to express one's true feelings and have to pretend to be another kind of emotion. Bailey Hongzhuang sat down on a chair. There were no extra things on the table, only paper, pen and a small copper gong. The paper and pen were used for the exam, while the small copper gong was used by the participants to hand in their papers after they had finished writing. The exam time is 2 hours. Once the time is up, you must hand in your papers. Otherwise, you will be considered to have given up. The Yu clan great elder's dignified voice rang out, waking everyone up. After all the contestants had taken their seats, the Yu clan members who were holding the test papers also slowly walked over and distributed the test papers to everyone. Bailey Hongzhuang looked at the group of doctors in front of her who were eagerly waiting for the exam. Her black and clear eyes could not help but smile. This situation reminded her of the scene when her old man tested her before. Very quickly, Bailey Hongzhuang received the papers. The questions on the paper were not few, but also not many. 2 hours was enough. Bailey Hongzhuang glanced at the questions on the paper and found that the points for these questions were very interesting. It seemed that her judgment was not wrong. Yu Xiqing did not intend to relax the standards for this preliminary round and was still as strict as before. This was because the points for many of the smaller questions were spread out, totaling up to 40 points. And at the end there were 2 major questions, each with 30 points. This meant that one of the 2 major questions had to be answered correctly in order to pass. If they could not answer it, then even if they answered all the questions correctly, it would be meaningless. These 2 major questions were very tricky. They raised a specific case and asked the doctor to diagnose and treat it. Although it was just a question, the introduction was very detailed. It was no different from seeing a real patient. A doctor who could cure this kind of illness would not be weak. The competition begins now. Following Yu Taoyan's words, all the doctors and poison masters picked up their pens and wrote down their number before starting to answer the questions. However, Bailey Hongzhuang was unhurriedly looking at the questions on the test paper, her expression leisurely. "Master, this kind of question shouldn't be difficult for you at all, right?" Xiao He transmitted her voice. Bailey Hongzhuang smiled. "This question is very good. Yu Xiqing really lives up to her reputation." "Ah. Don't worry, I'm just thinking about how much I should score." These questions were indeed difficult for others, but as a doctor whose medical skills were better than Yu Xiqing's, it was naturally not a problem. "Let's get a perfect score and show Di Tiansong," Xiao Bai said as if she wanted to see the world in chaos. Di Tiansong was such a despicable person. It would be unforgivable if she did not teach him a lesson. If her master's results were average, wouldn't Di Tiansong and the rest jump up and laugh at her? Chapter 2566. She didn't care about Di Tiansong and Ji Lixue at all. The only thing that worried her was Yu Ruilin. As the 7th young master of the Yu clan, Yu Ruilin naturally had a say in the clan. Once Yu Ruilin decided to take revenge on them, the Yu clan wouldn't care if her results weren't outstanding enough. On the contrary, if her results were outstanding enough, it wouldn't be easy for Yu Ruilin to squeeze her out of the recruitment assembly. Therefore it was best to get a high score. Ji Lixue had been paying attention to Bailey Hongzhuang ever since she stepped onto the stage. No matter what happened yesterday had made her lose face. She also wanted to know how capable Bailey Hongzhuang was to be so arrogant. However, after Ji Lixue finished 2 questions, she looked up and found that Bailey Hongzhuang was still looking at the test paper. She didn't even start to answer. She couldn't help but feel puzzled. Could it be that Bailey Hongzhuang couldn't even answer the first question? If that was the case, it would be interesting. However, Ji Lixue didn't continue to pay attention to Bailey Hongzhuang. This time, she was aiming to become Master Yu Xiqing's disciple. Therefore, whether it was the preliminary round or the final round, she had to get a good result. Only if she performed well enough would she have a chance to succeed. After making up her mind, Bailey Hongzhuang didn't delay any longer. She picked up her pen and started to write quickly. This test paper was child's play for Bailey Hongzhuang, so the speed at which she answered the questions was extremely amazing. She didn't even need to think and could directly write out the answers. She didn't even need 2 hours. After all the doctors and poison masters started to answer the questions, the entire central square quieted down. Everyone's eyes fell on the contestants who were answering the questions. 2 hours wasn't a long time. I heard that Ji Lixue has the highest expectations this time. She received guidance from Master Yu Siqing before and has been studying medicine all these years. It's very likely that she will become Master Yu Siqing's disciple through this recruitment assembly. Di Tiansong's strength is not bad either. He has always been on par with Ji Lixue. Speaking of which, I'm really curious. Don't underestimate the other contestants. Many of them are famous outside, it's just that we don't know about them. Once the results of the preliminaries are out, we'll know who has the highest chance of winning. Everyone was discussing in low voices, especially the locals of Yutian City. Every time the recruitment event was held, it was a good time to place bets. Therefore, the results of the preliminaries were very important. Ding. Just as everyone was thinking about who had the highest chance of winning, a clear gong sound suddenly came from the high platform. Hearing this voice, everyone couldn't help but be stunned. They looked at the high platform in astonishment. Didn't the exam just start? How did the gong sound so quickly? Not only were the onlookers stunned, even Yu Taotian and the others were stunned. They knew that someone would answer the questions early, but it seemed to be a little too fast. For a moment, everyone's eyes were focused on the green figure on the high platform. Look, isn't that the woman who taught Ji Lixue and Di Tiansong a lesson yesterday? She actually handed in her paper so early? Could it be that she couldn't do it so she gave up? Chapter 2567. Suddenly they heard the sound of a gong. Everyone who was taking the exam raised their heads and looked in the direction of the sound. However, when they saw Bailey Hongzhuang sounding the gong, they were all stunned. Ji Lixue was also stunned. When she started answering the questions, Bailey Hongzhuang was still looking at the papers and had not even started answering. Now she had not even finished answering the questions in front of her, and Bailey Hongzhuang was actually handing in her paper? What was going on? Was Bailey Hongzhuang planning to hand in a blank paper? At this moment, this was the only possibility that flashed in Ji Lixue's mind. Because in such a short time, Bailey Hongzhuang did not have time to answer the questions. However, when she knew this, Ji Lixue could not help but sigh in relief. It seemed that Bailey Hongzhuang did not have any achievements in medical skills. Thinking about it carefully, this kind of result was expected. Bailey Hongzhuang was so strong that she was obviously a cultivator. It seemed that she only had a little understanding of medical skills. However, the Yu clan's recruitment event was not something that could be passed by people with a little understanding of medical skills. It was better to give up now that she knew the difference. In this way, Bailey Hongzhuang should be leaving Yutian City soon. Then she would not have to face these troubles again. When Di Tiansong saw Bailey Hongzhuang handing in her paper like this, a mocking smile appeared in his eyes. He had already guessed that this woman was not capable. She actually dared to teach him a lesson. Since Bailey Hongzhuang was so useless, it should be easy to borrow Yu Ruilin's hands to teach her a lesson. Although Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Tiansong's strength was not simple, the number of experts in the Yu clan was also very shocking. Dealing with 2 cultivators was a piece of cake. The Yu clan great elder walked to Bailey Hongzhuang with a doubtful heart. Looking at the ordinary-looking but confident girl in front of him, he asked, "You want to hand in your paper?" Bailey Hongzhuang nodded her head slightly and passed the test paper in her hands to the Yu clan great elder, saying, "Yes." Hearing this, the Yu clan great elder took Bailey Hongzhuang's test paper. He thought that even if he wanted to give up, he should have waited a little longer. Because he gave up, he became the first person to hand in the test paper. It was really a little strange. However, when the great elder of the Yu clan discovered that the test paper was filled with beautiful handwriting, he couldn't help but widen his eyes. There wasn't a single blank spot on the entire test paper. This proved that this woman had answered all the questions in such a short time. Don't they need time to think? As the great elder of the Yu clan, he had a certain understanding of Yu Siqing's craftiness and methods in setting questions. It was definitely not easy to answer. However, the answers on the test paper were not fake. It was just that he did not know whether they were correct or not. Bailey Hongzhuang left the examination stage under the great elder of the Yu clan's incredulous gaze. She slowly walked to Di Beichen's side. The surrounding discussions also entered Bailey Hongzhuang's ears. In reality, other than the great elder of the Yu clan who knew that she had answered the questions, everyone else thought that she had given up because she was not strong enough. As a result, everyone looked at her strangely. If she was not strong enough, she should have kept a low profile. How could she play to the gallery like this? Wouldn't she be the one losing face in the end? Chapter 2568. Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen did not continue to stay in the central plaza. Today's preliminary round was over, and the results would only be announced the next day, so there was no need for them to stay. However, when this scene fell into the eyes of the others, it helped to turn their guesses into reality. Bailey Hongzhuang must have been afraid of losing too much face, so she hurriedly left. It was likely that her face would also leave Yutian City today. This kind of thing was not uncommon in the recruitment assembly. Many people thought that they had some understanding of medicine, so they tried to enter the Yu clan to learn medicine. It was a pity that the threshold to enter the Yu clan was much higher than they thought, so many people left when they realized that they could not meet the standards. Of course, after so many years, the only loser who was as arrogant as Bailey Hongzhuang was Bailey Hongzhuang. Master, your answering speed is too fast. I think no one believes you. Xiao Hei's eyes were filled with emotion. Master was in the limelight and everyone thought that she had failed. This was a very rare scene. This kind of question is difficult for others, but it's easy for me. The answer is in my heart, so naturally it won't take much time. Bailey Hongzhuang's bright and beautiful eyes were filled with confidence. Bailey Hongzhuang was called a godly doctor at such a young age. This kind of skill was not exaggerated, and it was not something that people like Ji Lishue could compare with. Looks like tomorrow's results will shock everyone. White Lion's face was filled with anticipation. Wherever his master appeared, she would always be the most dazzling one. After Yu Ruilin sent people to find out what happened to Ji Lishue and the others yesterday, he already knew the whole story. Di Tiansong did not lie to him. Ji Lishue had indeed suffered at the hands of Bailey Hongzhuang. You still haven't found out the identity of these two people? No, these two people have not contacted anyone since they came to Yutian City. They also did not mention their names, so we can't find out their identities. These two people are so sneaky, there must be something wrong. Yu Ruilin narrowed his eyes. Since the matter had been investigated, no matter what happened, as long as the other party had wronged Ji Lishue, he would not let them go. Otherwise, wouldn't others say that he, Yu Ruilin, could not even protect the woman he liked? At night, Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen were eating in the house. Suddenly, a series of footsteps came from outside the door. When the three beasts heard the sudden sound, they quickly returned to the chaos ring. Although their identities in Yutian City were not known in Yutian City, if Lan and the others heard it, things would be different. Bang. Uses the U's, U and Bailey S's, S and the others. Seeing this, Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen were not surprised. They had already guessed that Di Tiansong would urge Yu Ruilin to cause trouble, and they had been waiting here. When Di Tiansong saw that Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen were still in the restaurant and had not left, he could not help but look excited. Chapter 2569. You're about to die, yet you're still in the mood to eat. Di Tiansong sneered at Bailey Hongzhuang. But that's good. At least you won't starve to death. Di Beichen looked coldly at Di Tiansong, whose face was still bruised. It seems that you haven't remembered the lesson I taught you yesterday. Today I'll leave you with an unforgettable memory. Noticing Di Beichen's cold gaze, Di Tiansong couldn't help but feel a little guilty. Yesterday, Di Beichen had taught him a lesson that he couldn't fight back. He knew very well how strong this man was. However, now that he had Yu Ruilin's support, he mustered up his courage. I'm telling you, don't threaten me. Young Master Yu is here. Even if you threaten me, I won't be afraid. After saying this, Di Tiansong quietly took 2 steps back and made way for Yu Ruilin. Bailey Hongzhuang looked at Di Tiansong, who was acting like a lackey, and couldn't help but frown. Ji Lishue's taste in people is really bad. She actually likes a lackey like you. At this moment, Bailey Hongzhuang really felt sorry for Ji Lishue. After receiving Xiao Hei's report today, she had already guessed the ins and outs of the whole thing. Presumably, the reason why he had called Yu Ruilin and the others to cause trouble these days was also hidden from Ji Lishue. It seemed that Di Tiansong's despicableness wasn't something ordinary people could achieve. Hearing Bailey Hongzhuang's words, Di Tiansong and Yu Ruilin's expressions couldn't help but change. Their expressions were somewhat complicated. Di Tiansong couldn't help but feel guilty. He didn't expect Bailey Hongzhuang and Yu Ruilin to know that Ji Lishua liked him. However, now that they said this in front of Yu Ruilin, the situation wasn't very optimistic. Yu Ruilin's expression was slightly cold. He knew that Ji Lishua had always rejected him, and it had something to do with Di Tiansong. Now that someone had said it so bluntly, he felt a little embarrassed. After all, Yu Ruilin was much better than Di Tiansong in every aspect. Such a huge commotion had naturally attracted a lot of attention. However, with Bailey Hongzhuang's words, the crowd burst into an uproar. Suddenly Yu Ruilin and Di Tiansong's faces turned even uglier. "What nonsense are you talking about? Don't talk nonsense," Di Tiansong hurriedly said. However, Bailey Hongzhuang looked at the extremely guilty Di Tiansong in front of her, and an idea came to her mind. As the saying goes, killing two birds with one stone. She didn't want to be the first bird. Since Di Tiansong liked to play this game with her, she didn't mind playing with him. In the next second, Bailey Hongzhuang turned her gaze to Yu Ruilin. "Young Master Yu, anyone with a clear head would know that Di Tiansong is using you to help him vent his anger. Ji Lishua's attitude today is already very obvious, but Di Tiansong is still egging you on. It's not because of anything else, but because the person who was taught a lesson yesterday was Di Tiansong and not Ji Lishua. You're the dignified seventh young master of the Yu clan. Are you going to take revenge for such a despicable person?" Bailey Hongzhuang's lips curled into a faint smile. In fact, Di Baichen had only intimidated Ji Lishua yesterday. He hadn't caused any harm to her body. Chapter 2570. Hearing Bailey Hongzhuang's words, Yu Ruilin couldn't help but frown. He had originally planned to help Ji Lishua vent her anger, and Ji Lishua would probably be very grateful to him when she found out about this tomorrow. However, when Bailey Hongzhuang suddenly revealed everything, he couldn't understand it himself. Ji Lishua's behavior this morning was really strange. Seeing Yu Ruilin's hesitation, Di Tiansong hurriedly said, "Young Master Yu, don't listen to this woman's nonsense. Young Master Yu, Ji Lishua has already fallen out with Di Tiansong. As the saying goes, if you want to capture a beauty's heart, you have to seize the opportunity now. If you're still with Di Tiansong now, I don't think Ji Lishua wants to see you. If you don't believe me, you can ask the girls here." "Master, you're provoking an internal strife," Xiaobai said softly. "Anyway, both of them are bad people. Let's pick first. It'll be best if they can fight. Just treat it as a free show." Bailey Hongzhuang shrugged her shoulders. She was just looking at Di Tiansong's smug face and wanted to cut down his prestige. "What if I don't succeed? Then I'll cripple them all." Di Baichen knew that Bailey Hongzhuang was just doing it on a whim. He wasn't in a hurry and just treated it as a good show. Anyway, this group of people in front of them didn't pose any threat to them. Following Bailey Hongzhuang's words, Yu Ruilin couldn't help but look at the onlookers. He saw many girls secretly nodding their heads. From a girl's point of view, Ji Lishua's attitude this morning was the attitude she had in mind. For a moment, Yu Ruilin was also a little dumbfounded. This development was different from what he had imagined. However, at this moment, the Yu clan's great elder also appeared in the restaurant. "Ruilin, what are you doing?" The great elder of the Yu clan looked at Yu Ruilin unhappily, his expression revealing a bit of unhappiness and anger. Suddenly seeing the great elder of the Yu clan, Yu Ruilin couldn't help but be startled. He hurriedly bowed and greeted, "Great elder. Now is the time for the recruitment event. As the young master of the Yu clan, not only did you not help the Yu clan to maintain the peace of Yutian City, you even brought people here to cause trouble. What a scandal." While speaking, Yu clan's great elder couldn't help but glance at Bailey Hongzhuang. He had a deep impression of this girl who was the first to hand in her paper today. The most important thing was that Yu Siqing had already given the results. The results were extremely shocking. It was because of this that he was prepared to meet this woman. He didn't expect to see such a scene. Yu Ruilin had never thought that the great elder of the Yu clan would appear here. He was completely stupefied. Didn't the great elder usually stay in the clan? Moreover, today was the day when they were busy judging the results of the preliminary round. How could the great elder have nothing better to do than to stroll around here? "Come back with me." The great elder of the Yu clan did not have the mood to continue staying here. After throwing down a sentence, he turned around and left. Although Yu Ruilin was usually domineering in front of the great elder of the Yu clan, he didn't have the slightest bit of temper. He could only bring his people and leave. However, Yu Ruilin also didn't know what to do next. He also didn't want to be used by others. Now that he had the chance, he would go back and think about it. If he was really used, wouldn't he become a joke? Chapter 2571. Di Tiansong also wanted to leave with Yu Ruilin, but Di Baichen had already seen through Di Tiansong's plan. Therefore, when Di Tiansong was about to leave, Di Baichen had already blocked his path. Seeing Di Baichen suddenly blocking his path, Di Tiansong's face turned ugly. He wanted to leave immediately, but the Yu clan great elder was here, so he didn't dare to make too much noise. Most importantly, from Yu Ruilin's attitude just now, he could see that Yu Ruilin was already suspicious of him. If he still dared to call Yu Ruilin at this time, he was afraid that he would completely offend Yu Ruilin. Under such circumstances, Di Tiansong could only watch Yu Ruilin and the others leave. After Yu Ruilin and the others left, the onlookers couldn't help but withdraw their gazes and look at Di Tiansong with sympathy. Di Tiansong really went for wool and came home shorn. Yesterday Di Tiansong was taught a lesson by Di Baichen, so he was afraid that today Di Tiansong would be in big trouble. Di Baichen and Bailey Hongzhuang were like two mountains blocking Di Tiansong's path. Di Tiansong couldn't help but sweat, and his face became even paler and more embarrassed. Di Tiansong couldn't help but wipe his cold sweat and speak, but when he opened his mouth, he didn't know what to say. "Wife, how do you think we should solve this?" Di Baichen turned his head and looked at Bailey Hongzhuang. Yesterday his punishment was still too light. Today he wouldn't let Di Tiansong, who was full of bad ideas, have a chance to leave. Torture him first, then kill him. Bailey Hongzhuang's face was relaxed, and these cold and cruel words were said as if the weather was good today. Hearing Bailey Hongzhuang's words, Di Tiansong couldn't help but shiver. He only felt a chill rising from the bottom of his feet, as if he had fallen into an ice cellar. "I'll listen to my wife." Di Baichen smiled faintly. Today Di Tiansong would definitely not have a good ending in their hands. Hero, I was wrong, please let me go today." Di Tiansong's face was bitter, he was completely at his wits' end. He was no match for Di Baichen and Yu Ruilin's strength. And Yu Ruilin and the others weren't here, so he couldn't ask for help. Thinking of the ferocity of Di Baichen's attack, he knew that Di Baichen would really take his life. When you were arrogant before, you didn't think that you would do something like this now? Why didn't you think to you now? To you two's to? To Di Baichen's to be a bully others? S's you? I to see to you. Baichen's to him to him. To me. His this was S's. When the onlookers saw this, they couldn't help but shrink their necks. They all felt pain for Di Tiansong. In the next second, Di Baichen directly picked up Di Tiansong, walked into the room and then closed the door. Seeing that there was no good show to watch, the onlookers could only disperse. However, they could imagine that tomorrow, Di Tiansong wouldn't be able to continue to be arrogant in Yutian City. In the end, when Di Tiansong left Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Baichen's room, his face was bruised and swollen. It was impossible to see his original appearance. However, Di Tiansong being able to leave alive still surprised the onlookers. They thought that Di Tiansong would completely lose his life today. Chapter 2572. Master, you just taught Di Tiansong a lesson and let him go? Xiaohei looked at Bailey Hongzhuang with a puzzled expression. This was not in line with Master's personality. Killing him here would dirty this room. I've given him some itching powder so that he can enjoy himself tonight. Bailey Hongzhuang's expression was indifferent. Killing Di Tiansong like this might cause some trouble. It was better to let Di Tiansong enjoy the taste of pain. Moreover, the two of them could shirk all responsibility. Most importantly, killing Di Tiansong so cleanly was letting him off too easily. Hearing this, the three beasties looked at each other. They knew that things were not so simple. Master would not let Di Tiansong off so easily. Master, that Di Tiansong is also a good doctor. Can he neutralize this itching powder? If he can neutralize it, he should be Yu Siqing's direct disciple. Bailey Hongzhuang's lips curled up. The effect of this itching powder was really good. It was best used to torture people. Yu Siqing might be able to neutralize it, but Di Tiansong did not have the qualifications to ask Yu Siqing to do it. Therefore the result was already set. Di Tiansong would not live for more than 3 days. Once these words were spoken, Di Baichen and the three beasties understood that offending Bailey Hongzhuang would not end well. This method was indeed more suitable than directly taking Di Tiansong's life. I heard that Lan Qingyin's injury has not improved. Her body's condition is getting worse. Lan Jingquang and the rest should be under pressure right now, Di Beichen slowly said. After coming to Yutian City, Lan Qingyin's condition was no longer a secret. 1 spread to 10, 10 spread to 100. Very quickly, everyone knew about this matter. Now that more than a month has passed, Lan Qingyin's right-hand injury has not recovered. She must have lost a lot of blood. It is expected that her body's condition is getting worse. Bailey Hongzhuang's lips curled into a mocking smile. If the poison acted up again after Lan Qingyin's injuries had healed, then Lan Qingyin's condition wouldn't be so bad. But perhaps the heavens also did not like Lan Qingyin, so she suffered even more pain. This is all thanks to White Lion. Xiao He and Xiao Bai both gave White Lion a thumbs up. White Lion's actions that day were truly awe-inspiring. Even now, when they thought about it, they couldn't help but sigh in admiration. Master, if this continues, will Lan Qingyin die? No, with Yu Xiqing's ability she can't cure this poison, but she can still keep Lan Qingyin's life. Regarding this point, Bailey Hongzhuang was very clear. As long as the effects of the poison wore off, Lan Qingyin would recover on her own. However, this period of time was enough for some changes to occur in the Lan clan. She didn't believe that Lan Jingquang had complete control over the Lan family. She didn't believe that the Lan family didn't have any other voices. As long as there was still such a long period of time, it was enough for the other party to do a lot of things. At that time, when she went to the Lan clan, the situation would be more favorable. That vicious woman should live first. We have to let her know what happened next before she can die. White Lion raised his head. Thinking back to when he bit off Lan Qingyin's arm, that feeling was really satisfying. Chapter 2573. Compared to the crowd who were rushing to see the results, Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen were much more leisurely as they walked towards the central plaza unhurriedly. The Yu clan had been busy the entire day yesterday before they managed to sort out the results. This morning, the great elder of the Yu clan had already brought everyone to release the results. When Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen arrived at the central plaza, it was already in full swing. Everyone was crowded at the place where the results were announced, wanting to see the results of the preliminary round clearly. As cultivators, Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen used their movement techniques to smoothly walk to the front of the list. As expected, they immediately saw the number 169 and the name Shen Yi hanging at the top. Coming to Yutian City, Bailey Hongzhuang naturally could not use her real name, so she wrote Shen Yi's name upside down. Thinking about it, no one would think too much about this seemingly ordinary name. Who is this Shen Yi? How come I've never heard of him before? I don't know, there's no such person in the list of hot candidates. He should be from somewhere else, right? Full marks. This Shen Yi actually managed to get full marks for Great Master Yu Xiqing's questions. This is really amazing. Everyone's gaze was fixed on Shen Yi's name and the two shocking words full marks. As people of Yutian City, they all knew that Great Master Yu Xiqing's examination questions were not simple. Full marks, that was something that had never happened before. Even the previous hot candidate, Ji Lishue, only got 95 points and was ranked second. The difference between the two of them was a whole 5 points. Although the difference did not seem big, in reality the difference was shocking. The higher the score, the more one could see how amazing Shen Yi's medical skills were. When Ji Lishue saw Shen Yi's name, she could not help but frown, her face full of shock. She was originally full of confidence that she would definitely get first place in the preliminary round, but she did not expect that there would actually be someone with a higher score than her, and by such a large margin. From the looks of it, she only got 5 points, but this Shen Yi got 10 points. This kind of score would greatly benefit Shen Yi in the finals. Master, you're really amazing. Full marks. Xiao He could not hide the excitement on her face. Apart from Ji Lishue, who was in second place, who had 95 points, and Di Tiansong, who was in third place, who only had 93 points, most of the others had less than 90 points. The list only announced the names of those who scored 60 points and above. As for those who were eliminated, their names could not be found on the list and their scores could not be known. Bailey Hongzhuang's expression was indifferent. From the looks of it, the Yu clan great elder's sudden appearance in our restaurant yesterday was not an accident. The three beasts couldn't help but stare blankly at his words, but Di Beichen had already understood. Looks like your performance is too outstanding, even the great elder of the Yu clan wants to come and understand. Bailey Hongzhuang smiled. It's just that I didn't think that Yu Ruilin would be here, so the Yu clan great elder could only bring Yu Ruilin away. When everyone saw that Bailey Hongzhuang actually dared to come and look at the list today, their expressions became very interesting. This girl gave up so early yesterday, I didn't think that she would come to look at the results today. Could it be that she still thinks that she can pass the preliminary round by luck? I think that's the case. How interesting. Chapter 2574. Bailey Hongzhuang was one of the most eye-catching people at the recruitment assembly. She was very famous. However, she didn't become famous because of her fame and medical skills, but because of her conflict with Di Tiansong and the others. The strangest thing was that this woman had always been very mysterious. Until now, no one had found out her identity or name. Ji Lishue also came to the list of names. She looked straight at Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen and asked, "Who are you?" At a closer look, one could see that Ji Lishue's face was more haggard than before. "What does it have to do with you who we are?" Bailey Hongzhuang raised her eyebrows and looked at Ji Lishue playfully. Could it be that after she taught Di Tiansong a lesson yesterday, Ji Lishue couldn't stand the pain of a scumbag, so she came to reason with her? I admit that it was my fault for starting the conflict. However, you've already taught him a lesson. Why can't you let Di Tiansong go? Ji Lishue's expression was filled with helplessness. She was indeed angry with Di Tiansong, but she also felt very uncomfortable when she saw Di Tiansong in pain last night. We've already dealt with the trouble you caused, but Di Tiansong came to cause trouble again yesterday. Naturally, he had to endure it again. You should know the whole story of such a simple matter, right? Bailey Hongzhuang's expression was gentle. Her impression of Ji Lishue was not as bad as before. After all, it was indeed a very sad thing to be given away by the person you liked. Hearing this, Ji Lishue's expression was somewhat awkward. She knew that Bailey Hongzhuang was telling the truth. If Di Tiansong hadn't gone to cause trouble again, he wouldn't have ended up like this. However, the other party's methods were too cruel. Di Tiansong's painful expression was still vivid in her mind. If this continued, Di Tiansong might really die. Then I'll apologize on Di Tiansong's behalf. Can you let Di Tiansong go and hand over the antidote? Ji Lishue bowed deeply to Bailey Hongzhuang. They were indeed in the wrong. Moreover, Di Tiansong's life was still in Bailey Hongzhuang's hands. Not interested. Di Beichen dropped a few words and then left the list with Bailey Hongzhuang. There were a lot of people squeezing in and out of the crowd. This answer was completely out of Ji Lishue's expectations. Seeing that Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen ignored her request, she couldn't help but grit her teeth and make a decision. Plop. A voice rang out behind Bailey Hongzhuang, followed by Ji Lishue's voice. I beg you. Yesterday she had thought of many ways to cure Di Tiansong, but no matter what she did, she still couldn't cure him. The other party clearly wanted to torture Di Tiansong, so they didn't give him a quick death. She had grown up with Di Tiansong and couldn't bear to see him in such pain. Hearing this, Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen couldn't help but stop in their tracks. The two looked at each other and Di Beichen only smiled faintly. The choice was up to Bailey Hongzhuang. Bailey Hongzhuang turned to look at Ji Lishue, who was kneeling on the ground, and sighed in her heart. You're tuning in to the Han Li's Wuxia Adventures YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.